So far, like we mentioned, our prospect of 2023, Abdullah Mason. Disappointment of the year, Jermel Charlo. And upset of the year, Rafael Espinosa's win over Robesi Ramirez. Chris, what do we have next?
Let's go. Let's go with knockout of the year, Gio. I know
Wow.
he's a popular
Already?
category.
Already, Chris?
Already? You want to say that for later?
All right, so we got a prospect. All right, cool. We still all right, let's go. Knockout of the year. I'm sure this one's gonna get a lot of people debating as well. To me, man, to me it was hands down. But to
Okay.
me, I think it was the most satisfying win, and that's why I went with my pick. I could tell you mine off the bat, Chris. Uh, what's up?
Who's your pick? I'm surprised. I think I know who you're gonna pick, but I think I might be. I think I might have a different choice. But
All right, so
tell me pick.
all right, look, this one happened recent as well. This one happened recent. To me, it was very satisfying because this gentleman got robbed in the first fight. We'll go over robberies of the year too, but this guy got robbed in the first fight. He kept it classy. He said, "I'm gonna get my get back." Went in there, dominated his opponent once again, but this time knocked him out. This time he didn't survive, and I'm sure you guys know who I'm speaking of, and that's Rayo Valenzuela over Chris Colbert. You know, robbery the first time around. Chris Colbert talked a lot of trash. They even bet 50K. Rayo said, "I'm gonna knock you out." Colbert said, "Put some money on it." They put 50K on it, and Rayo kept it classy. He went in there, whooped him, and he said, "Hey man, look, you don't even have to pay me that 50K. Respect to you, and we're moving on." You know, kept it classy, but that right hook came. I don't want to say out of nowhere, but it was a one punch, one hitter quitter, Chris. You know, something he wasn't able to do in that first fight. You know, Colbert showed a lot of resistance, but to me, hands down, the brutality of it, one punch, laid out, night night, fight's over, beef should be over. I mean, Rai, he even said, "You don't even have to pay me." That's how bad this was. He felt bad for the guy. To me, hands down, Rayo Valenzuela. I'll pull up the poll in a little bit, but let's get your take on this, Chris.
Yeah, for me, I mean, obviously that's a big one, huge one. Probably the most satisfying get back since Coto Margarito. Yeah, that obviously everything happened in one calendar year. The cries of robbery. You know, we knew what Rayo did that first fight. You know, Colbert giving him that rematch, which I said in previous podcasts. I'm shocked that somebody will let their ego get in the way after going through hell and back in that first fight and squeezing out a win. And obviously Rayo getting that huge W, huge knockout. You've seen the memes, just take over social media with Rayo just, standing over, just a knocked out Chris Colbert. So it's a huge knockout. I don't disagree, Gio, but I just cannot discount what Junto Nakatani did
Okay.
to Anthony earlier in the year, man. You cannot, as big as this one was, as big as the story was between Rayo and Colbert, you cannot discount that huge knockout from Nakatani that happened earlier in the year, and he just flat out knocked out Andrew Maloney even before he hit the canvas and it was out, man. No count needed. Highlight reel. When that knockout happened, everybody said it. This is likely the knockout of the year. It's going to take something crazy to even come close to this one, and this one came close in my opinion, Gio. And obviously, there's a lot larger storyline with Rayo and Chris Colbert. But for me, Junko Nakatani with the knockout of the year.
God no. And I don't know who NM is, man. Flat out.
Flat out.
Flat out. And he was laid out flat, Chris. And look, when I saw that knockout, I I think we went on the show and said, "Hey man, it's gonna be very, very tough for anybody to beat that knockout." Very brutal. Same thing, one punch KO, overhand left. Maloney went night night. But as I wrote here in the comment section, uh, the reason I went over, the reason I picked Rayo over Junto Nakatani is, let's keep it real. Nakatani whooped his ass for 12 rounds. Like, we saw it coming. outclassed 100% Maloney. I'm not big on the Maloney twins, but I don't even think he won a round in that fight. He was hurt several times. He was knocked down. To me, I kind of saw it coming. I didn't think it was going to be as brutal, and I think the brutality is why people are picking it. But if Maloney survived that fight, that was going to be shocking to me, and that's the only reason that I didn't pick it. That was probably my second pick. I also liked, even though it was a stoppage by the referee, the Zhang stoppage over Joe Joyce. That was brutal. I don't know how Joyce got up. It only got 10% of the votes on the poll. Nakatani, surprisingly, only 11%. Surprisingly, and then a lot of people in the comments were saying weren't very happy with that. They were saying that people got to go watch that knockout again. But look, only 11%. Surprisingly, Davis over Garcia, 28%. Only reason I included this one is because it's the more mainstream one. It's the one that got people talking, people criticizing Ryan Garcia for quitting. It was a great punch, Chris. It was a great body punch. I'm a big fan of body punches, but it did seem like Garcia could have continued in that fight, and he decided to give up. And then, of course, Valenzuela against Colbert too. 51% of the voters, nearly 500 votes. And I'm actually very surprised that so many people voted for that one. I thought people were going to go with Nakatani, Chris, just like you're going with Nakatani. But unfortunately for you, I'm going with Valenzuela. The third judge is going with Valenzuela to overturn your Nakatani pick. But man, that was a close one. We got a lot of good ones. I'm surprised you didn't say Spence getting knocked out versus Crawford.
Yeah, again, there's a lot. There's the Brian Mendoza knocking out Fundora. There was a lot of knockouts this year, and like you mentioned, Gio, probably the most famous one is probably Ryan Garcia versus Tank, and we'll talk a little bit more about that event later on. But yeah, a lot of knockouts. The Colbert knockout also had it number 2, and it was very close. And if Nakatani's not, if he doesn't fight this year, doesn't get that knockout, hands down, Rayo Valenzuela would take knockout of the year honors. But not mad at it. The fans picked this one. Huge storyline. You picked this one. Not mad at it. Rayo Valenzuela for knockout of the year.
Yeah, and we have some very good suggestions also on that chat. Shout out to Chris checking in. He says Davis to the body. Mad Dog Age, shout out to you checking in. He says that that Zhang one was crazy. Sargent says Junto was better. He also says Venado KO against Conlon was good. And this one was probably the more difficult one for me to choose. Here were some other honorable mentions that I feel like were very, very overlooked. Let me pull this screen up for you guys. Mendoza against Fundora, Chris, you mentioned that one. That one was crazy. That one was brutal. And it was tough to leave that one off this poll and off this list. Lopez against Conlon, another satisfying one, another brutal one. Lopez, it seemed like he was going to have some difficulty in this fight, but he landed some big uppercuts and ultimately stopped Conlon over there at his hometown in the UK. Or is he from Northern Ireland? I got to double check that. But he had to travel over there and everything was against him. And he got that big stoppage. Inoue against Fulton was another big one. Probably the one of the more higher profile fights, along with Crawford and Spence, who was also there in honorable mentions. More so stoppages than straight up KOs. Of course, the Nakatani one was more brutal. The Rayon was more brutal. Joshua Hellenius was another big one too. That was earlier this year. Lara versus Wood, number 1. seems like so long ago. I believe that one was in February at the beginning of the year, but he, stopped Wood as well. All odds against him. And that kind of forced Ben Davison to throw in the towel. It wasn't a straight up KO, but was still brutal. It was surprising and it was satisfying as well. Opetaya against Zorro, which happened just last week, Chris. That was a brutal one. Zorro undefeated, first round KO. Opetaya, who's the guy right now at cruiserweight, also difficult to leave that one off the list. But man, I'm still processing that Rayo KO, man. That was beautiful.